I never thought a simple question would change the way my heart beats. I never imagined that asking, "So, when is the wedding?" would be the moment my world shifted, quietly, painfully, and without warning. It happened on a calm morning, the kind where the house feels soft like it is still waking up. The sunlight was pale. The kettle was humming. Everything was peaceful. And I remember thinking, today will be a good day. But life doesn't warn you before it cracks something inside you. I was sitting at the dining table, pouring tea into 2 cups, one for me and one for my daughter-in-law. She didn't drink it often, but I made it anyway. It was my small gesture of love, my quiet way of showing her that she was part of the family, that she belonged. She walked in with her phone in her hand, her eyes moving quickly over the screen. She seemed distracted, but I smiled anyway. I always smiled first. "Good morning," I said softly. She nodded, sat down, and tucked her hair behind her ear. For a moment there was silence, just the sound of the clock, the soft tapping of her fingers, the gentle clink of my spoon against the cup. I decided to ask her about the wedding that had been discussed for months. My son had mentioned they were planning a small ceremony, something simple, he said, something close. I thought I would help with the preparations. I thought I would be there. So I asked, smiling warmly, "When is the wedding?" "I should start getting ready, yes?" She lifted her eyes slowly, as if preparing herself. Then she said something I will never forget. Her voice was calm, too calm. "Oh, we got married yesterday." Just like that, as if she were telling me the weather, I felt the world pause. The sound of the clock stopped mattering. The tea grew cold between us. My breath stumbled. For a second, I wondered if I heard her wrong. Yesterday. They married yesterday. Without me, without a single word, without a single call. I looked at her face, hoping for a sign of warmth. A small smile, a bit of regret, something, anything. But she just looked back at me, waiting for my reaction. And in that moment, instead of crying, I smiled. A small, trembling smile that held 1,000 questions and 1,000 quiet heartbreaks. Because sometimes, when your heart breaks suddenly, you don't cry. You freeze, you breathe slowly, and you pretend you are okay. That morning, I learned that silence can be louder than any scream. When people hear a story like mine, they often ask the same question. How could this happen? How does a family reach a point where such an important moment is kept in silence? To understand what happened that morning, you need to know what came before it. You need to know about my family, our home, and the small things that built my hopes over the years. Because stories like this do not begin with one sentence. They begin with long histories, soft habits, and tiny moments that go unnoticed. So let me take you back, slowly, gently, to where it all started. I live in a modest house. Not too big, not too small. A home where memories sit quietly in corners. A home where every wall still holds the laughter of my children when they were young. My son grew up running through the hallway, bumping into furniture, asking for snacks every hour, and asking even more questions. He was always a curious child, the kind who would stare at the moon and ask why it followed us home. The kind who kept broken toys because he believed everything deserved a second chance. I raised him with love, the kind of love that wants nothing in return except the promise that your child will live a good life. He was my only son, my heart, my responsibility, my companion after his father passed away. After my husband died, the house became quieter. The nights felt longer. The mornings felt heavier. But my son kept me going. He was young, but he tried to take care of me in small ways. He would sit beside me at dinner. He would ask how my day was. And sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, he would check if I had eaten enough. Life was simple. Not perfect, but peaceful. The first time he brought her home, I remember thinking she had a soft face. She didn't smile much, but when she did, it looked gentle. She sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, almost as if she was afraid to disturb the air around her. My son looked at her the way young men look at someone they care about, with warmth, with hope. With that quiet pride that says, "This person matters to me," I welcomed her. Truly, I did. I asked her about her day, her work, her hobbies. She answered politely, but she was reserved. That didn't bother me. Not everyone opens up quickly. I believed that with time, she would feel comfortable with me, that she would see I wanted nothing from her except kindness in return. When they left that evening, my son hugged me and said, "Mom, she means a lot to me." I smiled and replied, "If she means something to you, then she means something to me too." That was the truth, because when you love someone, their happiness becomes part of your own. When she became part of our home, I tried my best to make everything easy for her. I gave them the bigger bedroom. I stepped back from making certain decisions. I tried not to overstep, even when my heart wanted to help. But living with another person is not always simple, especially when two women from different backgrounds and different habits share the same house. Some mornings, she stayed in her room longer. I thought maybe she needed space. Some evenings I made dinner, but she quietly cooked her own food. I told myself she might have different tastes. Some days she avoided long conversations. I assumed she was tired. I tried not to take anything personally. But slowly I began to feel like a guest in my own home, not because she did anything cruel, but because there was a distance. A wall, not built in one day, but brick by brick through silence. My son tried to keep balance. He loved both of us and he wanted peace. Sometimes he sat with me and talked about his work. Other times he spent long hours with her in their room. That was normal. That was expected. I wanted them to build their own life, but I also hoped they would let me be part of it. Not all of it, just a small part. A seat at their table, a place in their story. Looking back now, there were signs, moments that quietly whispered something is changing even before the big shock arrived. Like the day they went shopping for wedding clothes and returned with bags I had never seen before. I asked if I could help with anything, but she simply said, "We already handled it." Her voice wasn't cold, but it wasn't warm either. Or the evening they came home late and seemed unusually quiet. They said they had gone to meet a friend, but something in their eyes felt unsettled, as if something had happened, as if something had been discussed. Or the morning when I overheard her telling someone on the phone, "We will keep it simple, very simple." Her tone sounded firm, decisive, almost final. I didn't know then what she meant, but now I do. She was making plans where I didn't fit. The biggest warning was my son's silence. He wasn't cold, he wasn't distant. But he became careful around me, choosing his words gently, avoiding topics that once flowed naturally. One night I touched his arm and said softly, "You can tell me anything, you know that." He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "I know, Mom," he whispered. Then he looked away. That look, it stays with me even now. Because sometimes silence speaks before words do. I sensed something was happening, but I didn't want to believe it. I told myself I was overthinking. That I was reading too much into small things, that every family goes through changes. I convinced myself that once the wedding date was finalized, we would sit together. We would plan decorations. We would choose clothes. We would laugh. We would share sweet moments the way families often do before a wedding. I imagined helping her fix her hair. I imagined placing bangles on her wrist. I imagined blessing them before they began their married life. That was my dream, not a big one. Just a soft, simple one. The kind a mother holds close to her heart. The day before everything happened, the day before she said, "We got married yesterday," the house was strangely quiet. My son left early in the morning, she left an hour later. Neither returned until late at night, but I didn't ask where they went. I didn't want to appear intrusive. I simply waited, and hoped, and convinced myself that everything was fine. Sometimes the heart lies to protect itself. Sometimes denial is easier than truth. And then came the morning of the tea. A calm morning, a peaceful morning. A morning that started like any other. I didn't know that my world was about to shift with one simple sentence. I didn't know my heart was about to break in a quiet, painful way, not through yelling, not through anger, but through soft truth delivered in a steady voice. I didn't know that asking one harmless question would make me realize how far I had been pushed away from the center of my son's life. All I knew was that I loved them. And that I wanted to be included. Nothing more, nothing less. But life sometimes has different plans. Plans you never saw coming. And when she looked at me and said, "We got married yesterday," that was the moment everything inside me changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, in a way that only quiet heartbreak can cause. When she said those words, "We got married yesterday," the air in the room changed. Not suddenly, not sharply, but in a slow, heavy way. Like a curtain falling over the last bit of light. I remember sitting there with the teacup between my fingers. The warmth slipped away first, then my breath, then my smile. Inside, 100 thoughts began fighting each other, but on the outside I looked calm, too calm, almost frozen. I whispered, "Yesterday?" My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "Yes," she replied, as if she were confirming an appointment. We decided to keep it simple. Simple, a word that felt like a blade. My heart was hurting, but my voice stayed soft. I said, "I understand," even though I didn't understand anything at all. I watched her pick up her phone again. Her face didn't show any regret, but it didn't show any pride either. It was a straight, unreadable expression. The room felt colder than before. Even the walls seemed to listen. I waited for her to say more, something like, "We wanted you there. We didn't mean to hurt you." It all happened too fast. Anything. Any line that could have eased even a little of the pain, but she said nothing. She scrolled. She breathed steadily. She sat comfortably in the silence that was suffocating me. And I realized this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a decision. A few minutes later, my son entered the room. His footsteps were hesitant, soft, careful, almost like he was walking into a place where something fragile had just broken. He looked at me first, then at her, then back at me. He understood immediately. I saw it in his eyes, the guilt, the fear, the quiet apology he didn't yet know how to speak. "Mom," he whispered, but the rest of the sentence never came. I gave him the same trembling smile I had given her, a smile that hurt more than any tear. "Congratulations," I said gently. He closed his eyes for a moment, just one moment, as if the word cut him. He sat beside her, but the space between them felt strange, not loving, not united. She was calm. He was not. His hands kept fidgeting. His foot tapped the floor, his breathing was uneven. He wanted to say something, apologize maybe, explain something, offer comfort. But she kept her hand on his knee, and without looking at him, she lightly squeezed it. A silent message. Do not say more. Do not open the door to discussion. Do not explain. It was the smallest gesture, but it told me everything. This decision, to marry without me, was not his idea. And he was being guided to stay quiet. I folded my hands on the table, grounding myself. I did not want to break in front of them, not because of pride, but because I did not want them to think my love was weak. So I simply asked, "Were you happy?" A harmless question, but her reaction surprised me. She looked slightly annoyed, not visibly, but just a flicker in her eyes. "Yes," she replied quickly. "It was fine." Fine, another small cut. My son opened his mouth, as if he wanted to add something, a detail, a memory, a story, but she gently touched his wrist again. He stayed silent, and in that moment I realized something important. My son had not just married someone. He had married someone who controlled the spaces between us. I excused myself gently. "I'll go rest for a while," I said, but I didn't go to my room right away. I walked to the empty living room and sat on the sofa, staring at the window. The morning light was brighter now, but inside me everything was dim. I watched the neighborhood children walking to school. Their laughter floated in the air, their backpacks bounced, their mothers waved from the doorsteps. Life outside was ordinary, life inside me was not. I touched my chest, right where it hurt, not physically, emotionally. Deep, quiet, heavy, I whispered to myself, "They married without me. My own son married without me." And the words felt unreal, like a story happening to someone else. Later in the afternoon, my son knocked on my door. His voice was small. "Mom, can I come in?" I said yes. He sat at the edge of my bed, his shoulders tense. He looked like a child again, not the grown man who had just married, but the little boy who used to hide behind me after breaking something. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Those two words almost made me cry, but I held my tears. I placed my hand gently on his. "You don't owe me an apology, Beta." That was a lie, but a gentle lie. He lowered his head. She thought it would be better this way. Less stress, less drama, just simple. There it was, the truth hidden under soft explanation. I didn't say anything. He continued, breathing shakily. "We were afraid things would get complicated. The preparations, the guests, the money, everything." I looked at him and said, "You could have told me, we would have managed together." He nodded, almost painfully. "I know, Mom, I know." His voice cracked slightly. But before he could say more, her voice called him from the hallway. A firm, sharp, "Can you come here for a minute?" He looked at me one last time, a look full of things he wasn't allowed to say, and then he left. Over the next few days, something changed in the house. Not dramatically, not loudly, but slowly. They stayed in their room more. They ate meals at different times. They spoke in whispers sometimes, even when I was just in the kitchen. I tried to keep the house warm the way I always did. I cooked their favorite meals. I left small sweets on the table. I greeted them with smiles. But the distance between us had become real. Thick. Hard to bridge. Every time my son looked at me, guilt sat in his eyes. Every time she looked at me, something unreadable sat in hers. Not hate, not anger, just a barrier. A wall only she understood. Sometimes, late at night, I heard them talking in their room. Her voice was firm, his voice softer. I couldn't hear the words clearly, but I could hear the tone. She was explaining. He was agreeing or trying to. Once I heard him say, "She is my mother." His voice was emotional. And she responded sharply, "I know, but you are my husband." That sentence echoed through the hallway like a warning bell. One morning, I made breakfast for all of us. I placed 3 plates on the table. When they came out, she looked at the table for a moment, then said, "We already ate." My son looked uncomfortable. He looked at the food, then at me, and then at her. "We can sit for a bit," he said gently, but she touched his arm lightly. "We're running late." And they left. The untouched plate sat there, waiting for people who had already moved past me. I sat down slowly. My heart felt heavier than the food in front of me. A week later, the wedding photos arrived on his phone. Not many, just a few. A simple ceremony, small room, 2 witnesses, a plain table. No flowers, no decorations, no family. He didn't show them to me directly. I saw them accidentally when he placed his phone on the table as he drank water. I didn't say anything. He didn't notice me looking. But those photos, they cut deeper than anything. Not because they married simply, that was their choice, but because I wasn't there, because I wasn't invited, wasn't informed, wasn't considered, because a mother is not meant to be a stranger at her own child's wedding. I tried, gently, to create small moments with them. A shared dinner, a walk outside, a cup of evening tea, but every time she found a reason to decline. We're busy. We already planned something. Maybe next time. Next time became another day, then another, then never. My son tried to balance things. Sometimes he sat with me for 10 minutes. Sometimes he helped me in the kitchen. But each time she called him soon after. And he went, not because he didn't love me, but because he had built his new life around someone who didn't want me in it. One evening, I overheard her speaking to him softly but firmly. She needs to let us live our own life. We don't need her involved in everything. I stepped back quietly, pretending I hadn't heard anything. But inside, something broke again. I didn't want to be involved in everything. I just wanted to belong somewhere. Even a corner of their life would have been enough. A few nights later, when my son came to check on me, I gathered the courage to ask, "Tell me honestly, why didn't you want me there?" For a long moment, he said nothing. His silence felt like a confession. Then he whispered, "It wasn't my choice, Mom." I felt the breath leave my chest. He looked toward the door, making sure she wasn't listening. She thought it would be easier without anyone. No pressure, no expectations, no opinions. "And you?" I whispered. He lowered his eyes. I didn't want to upset her. I nodded slowly. The truth was painful but clear. My son didn't choose to exclude me, but he chose to follow her choice. And sometimes, the choices people make quietly hurt more than the ones they make loudly. Over the next few days, I began to understand something. This wasn't just about the wedding. This was about my place in their life. A place I once thought was secure, but was now slipping away quietly. She didn't hate me. She didn't mistreat me. She didn't insult me. She simply didn't want me close. And my son, he was torn between love and loyalty, between his mother and his wife, between his past and his future. And a torn person cannot hold two people together. There are days in life that begin like any other, but end up changing everything. This was one of those days. It was an afternoon filled with soft sunlight, the kind of warm light that makes old memories feel close. I was in the kitchen preparing tea, not for anyone, just for myself, because the house had grown quiet again, more quiet than before. My son had left early for work. She had left shortly after him. I had become used to being alone, but that day, something inside me felt unsettled, like the air was holding its breath, like something unseen was waiting. I didn't know that life was preparing to show me the truth I had been trying not to see. Around noon, my phone rang. The screen showed a number I did not recognize. I hesitated before picking up. "Hello," I said softly. A woman's voice came through, calm, polite, professional. "Am I speaking to the mother of your son's name?" "Yes," I answered, my heart tightening slightly. "I'm calling from his workplace," she continued. "He fainted a little while ago. He's stable, but we wanted to inform his family." The room around me stopped. My son, my only child, fainted. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. The woman gently repeated herself, sensing my shock. "He's stable now, but he should not drive. Could someone come?" I whispered. "I am coming." My hands trembled as I grabbed my dupatta and keys. Fear does that. It steals strength from your bones, leaving you hollow and shaky. I didn't call her my daughter-in-law, not because I didn't want to, but because something in my heart said she already knew. A strange instinct. A quiet whisper. I didn't question it, I just rushed. When I reached the office building, someone guided me toward the medical room, and there he was, lying on a small bed, pale, weak, with his eyes half closed. His breathing was steady but slow. I walked to him quietly and placed my hand on his forehead the way I used to when he was a child. He opened his eyes slightly. "Mom," his voice was soft, as if floating between waking and sleeping. "I'm here," I whispered. "I'm right here." He tried to smile. A nurse approached me. "It looks like exhaustion," she explained. "He hasn't been eating well or resting properly." My heart tightened. Exhaustion. From what? From work, from stress. From keeping peace between two women, or from carrying a marriage that had begun with wrong choices? I didn't ask. Some things a mother simply feels without words. About 20 minutes later, she rushed into the room, my daughter-in-law. Her face showed worry, but also something sharper. Annoyance? Frustration? I couldn't tell. She went straight to him. "What happened? Why didn't you tell me you were feeling like this?" she demanded. He looked away. She glanced at me, then back at him. He said softly, "Mom came first." The way he said it, gentle, grateful, with a little relief, it changed the air. Her eyes shifted. Not at me, at him, as if she had discovered something she didn't want to see, that in his moment of weakness his heart reached for me. I stepped back quietly, giving them space. But she didn't move closer to him. She stood stiff, her arms crossed. A doctor entered with reports. "It's simple fatigue," he explained, "but he needs care, proper meals, regular sleep, less emotional strain." The words emotional strain hung in the air like a heavy curtain. My son looked at me, not her, and she noticed. She spoke sharply, "He will rest. I will take care of him." The doctor nodded and left. As soon as the door closed, she turned to him. "You should have told me you weren't feeling well," she said. Her voice was tight, almost accusing. He murmured, "I didn't want to worry you." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "You worry her, but not me." He looked confused. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer. She simply picked up his bag and said, "Let's go." I stepped forward gently. "I can take him home." "No," she said quickly. "I will." Something in her tone made my son sit up straighter. "Mom can ride with us," he said softly. She turned to him sharply. "But she came for me," he interrupted in a quiet, firm voice. "She should come." It was the first time he had softly challenged her since they married. Her expression hardened only for a moment, but I saw it. A shift, a spark, a beginning of something deeper. The ride home was silent. He sat in the back, leaning against the window. I sat beside him, holding his hand like he was still my boy. She drove, her grip on the steering wheel tight. My son murmured, "Mom, don't worry, I'm okay." I smiled gently. "I know, but I didn't know, not really." Children rarely collapse from simple tiredness, not unless their heart is carrying weight they cannot speak about. I brushed his hair back softly. He closed his eyes. She kept glancing at us in the rearview mirror. Her jaw tightened every time she saw my hand on his. Something inside her was cracking, slowly, quietly. A realization, maybe, that no matter how much space she tried to create, there was a connection she could not break. A mother's bond. When we reached the house, I helped him to his room. She followed us, but she didn't help. She stood by the door. I made him lie down, covered him with a blanket, placed a glass of water beside him. He whispered, "Thank you, Mom." I said gently, "Rest now." I turned to leave to give them privacy, but my daughter-in-law stopped me. "Wait," she said. Her voice sounded strange, not angry, not soft, something in between. "Can I talk to you outside?" I nodded. We stepped into the hallway. She crossed her arms and stared at me. "I don't want you to interfere in our marriage." I stayed calm. "I'm not interfering. You came to his office." "They called me," I replied quietly. "And he wants you here more and more," she said sharply. "He listens to you, he turns to you." I took a deep breath. "My son turned to me because he was unwell. That is natural." She shook her head. "No, it's not that simple. You make him dependent on you." Her words were unfair, but I stayed steady. "I don't want control," I said. "I only want to be part of his life, that's all." She looked away, as if she didn't want to hear that. Then she whispered something more revealing. "He treats you like his home, not me." Those words, they were not about hate, they were about fear, her fear of losing him emotionally. It softened something inside me. I spoke gently. "He lived with me his whole life. It takes time for a bond to shift, but it will naturally." But she shook her head firmly. "No. I need it to shift now. I need him to choose." I felt my heart stop for a moment. "Choose?" My voice barely left my lips. "Yes," she said. "He cannot keep running to you for every emotional need. I am his wife." Her eyes held something desperate. Not cruelty, not evil, just insecurity. But her insecurity was sharp enough to cut me. I whispered, "I am not asking him to choose between us." "You don't have to," she replied. "His actions already show who he chooses." The hallway felt colder. The truth was sitting in front of me, uninvited, unavoidable. She was trying to push me out, not because she hated me, but because she wanted to secure her place. And she believed my presence threatened that. She stepped closer. "I want space with my husband, real space, emotional space, and I can't have it if you stay involved." I closed my eyes for a moment. Her words weren't loud. They weren't cruel. They were simply honest, painfully honest. "I raised him alone," I whispered. "I gave him everything I had. I never wanted to stand in your way." She didn't soften. "Mothers always say that, but you don't realize how much influence you have." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I said something I never imagined saying. "I don't want to stand between you two. If you need space, I can step back." She didn't expect that. Her eyes widened slightly. "You mean?" "I can stay in my room mostly," I said quietly. "I won't ask for time. I won't interfere. I won't expect anything." Her face relaxed. The tension in her shoulders eased. She nodded slowly. "That would help." And just like that, a mother took a step back from her own child, not because she wanted to, but because she loved him. Because she wanted peace in his marriage, even at the cost of her own heart. That night, as I sat alone in my room, something inside me shifted forever. I realized the truth. My son hadn't just married someone. He had married a life where I no longer fit the way I used to. He still loved me, but his world now belonged to someone else. And I had to learn how to live on the outside, not because I was pushed out violently, but because I was asked quietly. And sometimes, quiet requests break the heart deeper than loud ones. When your heart breaks, you think the pain will stay forever. You think it will sit inside you like a heavy stone, refusing to move, refusing to heal. But time has a soft way of touching even the deepest wounds. That first night after everything happened, I sat in my room with the door half closed. The house felt different. Not angry, not cold, just quiet, like it was watching me, waiting to see what I would do next. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the small photograph on my bedside table. It was a picture of my son when he was 5, his hair messy, his smile missing 2 teeth. I touched the frame softly, as if touching his childhood again. "I raised you with love," I whispered. "Maybe I forgot to teach you how to return it." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't that simple. People grow, people change. People make mistakes not because they are heartless, but because they are confused, scared, or lost. That night, instead of crying, I breathed. Long, slow breaths. I let the pain move through me in small waves instead of fighting it. I allowed myself to feel everything: the sadness, the confusion, the disappointment, the love I still had. Because even hurt cannot erase love, not a mother's love. The next morning, the house felt softer. Maybe it was me. Maybe I was learning to breathe again. I woke up early, made tea, and sat on the veranda. The air was cool. Birds were singing as if nothing in the world had gone wrong. For a moment, I envied them, their simple happiness, their simple lives. But then I realized something. Life is only simple if we choose not to carry yesterday into today. I watched the sun rise slowly, painting the sky in warm colors, and I decided I would not let bitterness take root in me. Bitterness grows fast. Once it enters a home, it never leaves quietly. So I told myself I will not become the villain in my own story, and I will not make them the villains either. I stood up, washed my face, and made breakfast as usual. The house smelled like home again: eggs, warm bread, gentle spices. Small things have the power to make a day feel safe. In the days that followed, I gave my son and daughter-in-law space, not out of anger, not out of pride, but out of respect for them and for myself. Sometimes love means stepping back, not stepping forward. My son tried to talk to me a few times, but I kept it calm and polite, not cold, just measured. He would say, "Mom, can we talk?" And I would answer softly, "Not yet, not until you're ready to speak with truth and with heart." He never argued. He just nodded slowly, guilt written across his face. My daughter-in-law, however, stayed quiet. She moved gently around the house, almost as if afraid to disturb me, and though I could see her discomfort, I didn't rush to soothe it. People need to sit with their own actions sometimes. It's how growth begins. One afternoon, about a week later, I heard the front gate. The sound was familiar, soft metal, slow footsteps, a careful push. I stepped outside and saw someone I hadn't expected at all: my sister-in-law, Farah. Farah had always been good at reading emotions. Better than me sometimes. She looked at me with concern immediately. "I heard," she whispered, 2 words full of quiet sadness. I didn't ask who told her. News travels through hearts faster than through mouths. She walked in and hugged me, a gentle hug, one that didn't force strength into me but shared it. "You don't deserve this," she said softly. "But you will get through it." I didn't cry, but something inside me loosened like a knot finally learning how to untangle. We sat together for hours, talking about life, children, the mistakes families make when fear sits between them. Farah reminded me of something important. Love is not always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet choice to stay soft when the world turns hard. Her words stayed with me. 2 evenings later, something unexpected happened. I was in the garden watering the plants when I heard footsteps behind me. It was her, my daughter-in-law. She stood there holding a small notebook. Her hands were trembling. "Can we talk?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I placed the watering can down and nodded. She sat on the stone bench while I remained standing. The air was thick with unspoken things. She took a deep breath and opened the notebook. Inside were several short notes: apologies, explanations, thoughts she had been too afraid to voice. "I wrote these," she said, "because I didn't know how to say them out loud." My heart softened, not fully but a little. "Read them," I said gently. Her voice shook with every line. "I am sorry. I should have told you. I was scared you would not like me. I thought I would disappoint you. I thought you preferred someone else for him. I didn't know how to be part of this family. I made a mistake, a big one. I didn't marry him to hurt you. I married him because I love him." And then I panicked. The last line was the one that broke my heart in the softest way. I have never had a mother-in-law before. I didn't know how to be someone's daughter again. When she finished, she wiped her eyes quickly, like she didn't think she had the right to cry in front of me. I approached her slowly and sat beside her. "You hurt me," I said quietly. She nodded. "I know. But I hear you," I added, and her shoulders fell, relief and guilt mixed together. Sometimes forgiveness begins with 4 simple words. "I hear your heart." When my son came home that night, she pulled him aside. They talked for a long time behind their closed door. Later, he came to my room, knocked softly, and entered only when I said yes. His face was tired, but honest, more honest than I'd seen in months. He sat on the edge of my chair and held his hands together. "Mom, I failed you." His voice cracked. "I should have told you. I should have stood up. I should have made sure you were there." I waited silently, letting him speak. "I was afraid," he continued. "I thought if I delayed, if I involved too many people, she would change her mind. I thought I would lose her, and in trying to protect that, I ended up hurting the one person who always protected me." He looked up with wet eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom, truly." I placed my hand on his. "I raised you to be human, not perfect," I said softly. "And humans make mistakes." Collapsed into my arms like the little boy he used to be. "I love you," he whispered. "I know," I replied, "and I love you." Forgiveness doesn't happen in one moment. It happens in layers. A soft conversation here, a gentle action there, a slow rebuilding of trust. My daughter-in-law began helping me in the kitchen, not out of obligation, but with a visible desire to learn, to bond, to be part of the home she had entered. My son asked about my day again. He sat with me during tea time. He listened, really listened, the way he used to. The house breathed easier. The rooms felt lighter. Even the silence turned warm again. One day I found a small box outside my door. Inside it was a framed photograph, the 3 of us together from years ago. Beside it was a note in my daughter-in-law's handwriting. "Please accept this as the first brick in rebuilding what I broke." I held the frame to my chest and smiled, not because everything was fixed, but because healing had begun. Weeks passed. Then a month. Slowly, the wounds began to close. Not erased, just softened, the way old scars fade. One evening, as we all sat in the living room, my daughter-in-law suddenly said, "I want us to take a picture together, a new one, a fresh start." My son looked at me with hopeful eyes. I nodded gently. We stood together under the warm yellow light of the lamp. She held the camera, hesitated, then handed it to my son. "Actually, you take it," she said, stepping beside me. She placed her arm around me. For the first time, it felt natural. As the camera clicked, she whispered, "Thank you for giving me another chance." I smiled softly. "Thank you for asking for one." The picture captured something important, not perfection, not a flawless family, but a quiet beginning. A beginning built on truth, on courage, and on the understanding that love, even when bruised, can still grow. Life has a quiet way of teaching us things. Sometimes it teaches through happiness, sometimes through loss, and sometimes through moments that break us open just enough for light to enter. When I look back at everything that happened, the silence, the shock, the painful truth, I realize something important. Not every hurt is meant to destroy us. Some hurts are meant to change the way we see the people we love. Some are meant to show us that even those closest to us are still learning how to love. That morning when my daughter-in-law said, "We got married yesterday," I felt like the world had slipped out from beneath my feet. I felt forgotten. I felt unneeded. I felt like a chapter of my life had been closed without my permission. But now, standing on the other side of that pain, I understand something I didn't understand then. Love is not about being included in every moment. Love is about choosing to stay soft even when you feel excluded. Love grows when we create space for others to learn, stumble, and rise again. Over the months that followed, our home became warm in a new way. Not the same as before, something different, something deeper. It wasn't a perfect home, but it was a healing one. My daughter-in-law began to share her fears more openly. My son learned how to speak with honesty instead of haste, and I learned how to listen without letting old wounds speak louder than the present moment. In the evenings, we sometimes sat together on the veranda, 3 cups of tea, 3 quiet hearts trying their best. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we said nothing, but even silence felt safe again. One evening, as the sky turned orange and the birds flew home, my daughter-in-law asked softly, "Do you still feel hurt?" I looked at her, really looked at her. At her nervous fingers twisting the edge of her scarf, at the softness in her eyes. At the girl who entered our home feeling uncertain, insecure, and afraid of disappointing me. "I felt hurt," I answered honestly, "but I don't feel alone, and healing feels better than hurt." She nodded, tears glistening but not falling. My son placed his hand on hers, giving her the support she once struggled to ask for. In that moment, I realized something. Families don't heal because everything is perfect. Families heal because someone, at some point, decides to forgive quietly. To understand gently. To stay even when leaving would be easier. I am not the same person I was the day she told me they married without me, and I don't want to be. Pain changed me, but it changed me into someone softer, not harder. Someone who listens more. Someone who understands that everyone carries unseen fears. Someone who knows that sometimes, even love makes mistakes. If there is one lesson I hold close to my heart now, it is this. We cannot choose the way love arrives, but we can choose the way love continues. Love continues when we forgive. Love continues when we speak gently. Love continues when we choose peace instead of pride. Love continues when we believe that broken moments can become beautiful beginnings. Today, when I look at my daughter-in-law, I see someone who is trying, truly trying, to be part of this family. And when I look at my son, I see a man who learned to balance two homes in his heart. And when I look at myself, I see a woman who walked through hurt without letting bitterness steal her warmth. The house feels whole again, not because everything is perfect, but because we decided to heal together. Healing is the most beautiful way a family can love. If you'd like, I can now.